Okay. Welcome everyone once again to this third annual Tourism Marketing and Management webinar. My name is Juho Pesonen and I'm Professor of Tourism Business at the University of Eastern Finland's Business School. And together with my colleague, Professor Raija Kompula, we are managing our Tourism Business Research Group. And the goal of today is to give you an overview of what is happening in tourism marketing and management research that our research group is doing. Let's start first by looking into shortly into who we are. As I said already, we are a small research group of about 12 people operating in University of Eastern Finland. So we are based in Joensuu campus. In Eastern Finland, quite close to the Russian border. We do research, we do education and teaching, as well as, of course, collaborate a lot of businesses with various projects funded by European Union, Academy of Finland, Business Finland, and many other funding sources. We have a good lineup of adjunct professors who are our dearest and closest collaborators in research and education, as well as about 10 PhD researchers focusing on their research skills and capabilities. Besides the research that we are doing, well, actually, what we are interested in studying is shortly introduced in this slide. So we are interested in what is happening in tourism business and tourism destination management and marketing when there are these two major drivers and trends of drivers of change and trends happening. One of them is, of course, digital transformation, everything that is happening with information and communication technologies and how that new infrastructure, new business models, developments are affecting tourism businesses. Another huge transformation that we are interested in is, of course, this sustainability transformation that our societies are in a hurry to conduct, but at the same time that has to be conducted successfully and also in a sustainable way. These two trends are causing huge pressure for tourism businesses and destinations, and we feel like that it is the cornerstone of tourism business to be profitable. There cannot be businesses without profitability, but profitability is just a baseline. Profitability is not enough to warrant or justify the existence of tourism and tourism businesses, but tourism has a possibility to be a major power for good, and we are seeing more and more evidence of how that happens, that by their activities, tourism businesses are not only profitable, but also increase well-being, the well-being of local people, the well-being of tourists, and even the well-being of nature, especially the recent discussions and scientific developments on regenerative tourism and transformative tourism experiences are some of the keywords that we are looking into in this equation. And our education, of course, that we are doing is very much based on these topics. First of all, we are teaching, and our teaching is based on the research that we are doing. We have a master degree program, which is aimed at creating and educating tourism business development experts. We are based in Joensuu. Also for this program, our students are participating and studying either online or in Joensuu, as our teaching is, especially at this moment, in hybrid form. We have about 15 to 20 student annual intake, and the next application period for our studies starts in 4th of January next year for studies starting in September 23. There are 4 topics that go through all the courses that we teach, which are nature tourism, well-being tourism, sustainability, and technology. These are the topics that we feel like are highly important in tourism education, tourism research, especially looking far into the future, and I think our master degree program has a strong practical relevance as well with these skills and capabilities that we are teaching on these topics. And besides, of course, master degree program, we have a doctoral program. We have Professors Raija Komppula, me, and Associate Professor Henna Konu, who are supervising our PhD researchers as well, and they are a really important part of our research activities. That being said, now we are going to look and use this day to go through the results and insights that our research group, as well as its affiliate members, have conducted during the past year. These presentations, I would say, are excellent demonstration of the topics and the range of activities that we do, and hopefully they will provide you insights and understanding on tourism marketing and management and the current and future trends within the field. And without any further introductions, welcome everybody once more, also those who have just joined in, and I'm really happy to give the floor to our Associate Professor Henna Konu, who has just come back to our research group after 4 years at the Natural Resource Institute in Finland. So Henna will be talking a little bit about nature tourism trends and her insights of more than a decade of research in this field. So I'm really happy to welcome you, Henna, and looking forward for your presentation. So please, the floor or the electronic floor is yours.
Thank you, Juho. I hope you can hear me, because I have had a bit problems today with the Zoom. So
we can hear you and we
perfect.
can see you, so everything's
perfect. You promised quite a lot to talk about everything what has happened in the last 10 years, but I'm now probably more trying to look to the future. And if you could still confirm that you see my slides.
Yes, it's perfect.
Perfect. So I promised to talk about nature-based tourism trends, and I added here from research to practice, because I think that this is very central point of view while you are discussing the different themes on a topic. And as Juho said, I joined the team again after being 4 years working in another institution. And then I was also asking Juho, what do you think I should talk about? And this is what I ended up with. So starting with the nature tourism trends, naturally, we have the background that we cannot ignore the global trends that we have. The urbanization, concentration of wealth and aging of population, and so on are quite heavily also impacting the nature-based tourism. Already before the COVID pandemic, we could already see that certain tourism trends were visible, and especially now they are intensifying due to the COVID. And one of them is, of course, the utilization of nature and issues that are related to that, in addition to the sustainability themes. We are also living in quite uncertain environment at the moment and having to face different rapid changes. And this is also have put the emphasis that we need resilience also in the sector. And as you also said, the sustainability issues, the themes quite broadly have been under discussion and has a huge impact also for the tourism industry, and that way also to the nature-based tourism. All these aspects have shown that we have a lot of increased demand on nature-based services, including nature-based tourism. Sorry, did I put? Can you see now also this one? Oh, sorry about that. But also that there are also different trends that are particularly coming in nature-based tourism and in utilizing nature-based services. And one of them is the health and well-being impacts of nature, and also that how nature-based tourism activities can support the overall sustainability in the sector. Just to show you an example about the demand for nature-based services. This is the development of national park visits and national park network in Finland. And as you see here in 2019, when the COVID pandemic started, the nature visits boomed in national parks, but also other nature areas in Finland. And even though the restrictions have been now lowered down, so we can also see the trend that we are still having a lot of nature-based visits. So it's something that stayed there. So people are increasingly using the nature-based areas and nature-based services. But also, when we are looking this, we need to keep in mind the global challenges that we have. We have the global warming issue. Also, the climate change is the biggest challenge that we face today, together with the biodiversity loss. And also, when we look at the tourism sector, and especially the place-bound tourism industry and the nature-based forms of tourism, they are especially sensitive of these changes in climate and also in the environment. We know that in many destinations, for example, winter destinations, snow cover is they are losing snow cover, but also in certain areas where the one of the key areas, the selling points are built around certain natural resource or certain animal species, it can be also very vulnerable in that sense. So accelerating climate action in tourism is therefore also utmost importance for the resilience of the sector. And this is especially when we are looking at the different nature-based tourism services, destinations, and so on. So what to look, as we are now discussing about tourism marketing and management, and our program is located in the business school, I took more this kind of sustainability in nature-based tourism business approach. And for that, we have important issues that we need to look at. We have customer insight. What are actually the customers, what they want for the service providers, what they are expecting, what kind of experiences that they are expecting to have, but also that how the sustainability and responsibility actions are integrated in the business activities, in their business plans, and also taking the resource perspective that might be a bit less focused on, at least for later years. So what is actually the role of tourism businesses in the resource perspective? So what they are doing, or how they are paying attention to the operational environment of nature-based tourism, which also links to the wider discussion. What is the role of the tourism industry in nature and landscape conservation, for example, as all the nature-based activities does not take place in protected areas. So all of these nature-based resources that are utilized by the businesses are not located on those areas that are publicly managed. So this is one of central questions in the field too. Then I wanted to go a bit more into these three different teams. So discussing about tourist experiences in this changing world. So we all know that the tourist values have become more softer, and they are also focusing on certain well-being perspectives and so on. Naturally, there are a lot of literature and research on tourism motivation, tourism demand, cultural differences, customer value, and tourist experience, and so on. But still, there is a need to be on or try to look what is the current situation, because these values or needs are changing, as we have been seeing in the last few years. due to different changes in our society. So I tried to put here certain topics that I think that are central. Juho also mentioned briefly some of them already. But when we are looking different research directions, what to look at in future and what is now quite topical already is to have more customer insight onto transformative and regenerative tourism experiences. So the transformative experiences, what I mean is how to enable or facilitate changes for tourists for better. It can be changes for how for their well-being, have better well-being, or then changing on their behavior to be more sustainable while they're traveling, and then while they are traveling and learning something new, how they can adapt that also in their everyday lives. Also related to this theme, what are actually those triggering factors for more sustainable travel and more sustainable behavior, and how tourism and also in nature-based tourism, how it can be facilitated. Certain studies have already looked at this topic, and for example, it has been shown that when people feel like that they get something from nature, they are also more willing to give back, so contributing to the well-being of the nature too. Then also what is important is the customer perception on virtual travel experiences and virtual nature experiences, because this is something that has been now discussed a lot, and also not just in a tourism context, but also for target groups that this doesn't necessarily have the possibility to travel on site and have the experience in there. So there are a lot of different research avenues to look more into these virtual nature experiences. What is the core of that experience, and how through those experiences we could also promote well-being for the participants of those kind of services. Then if I have here one example, what we have done in our research group and what is still ongoing research is to look more on the role of nature in these well-being experiences. And what was done was to focus on these what is actually the nature-based or the role of nature in these kind of experiences. And this was done by looking more into these different pathways to nature connection. As I said earlier, it has been already shown that when people feel that they get something from the nature, they are more willing to give back. And in this pathway of nature connection, this has been used in different contexts, but also looking at it from the tourism setting. So what is the contact? So engaging with the nature through different senses. In the beauty, how you appreciate the aesthetic qualities of the nature. When you're looking at the meaning, how to use nature to communicate something that are not directly expressed, for example, through a symbolism or so. Then the emotion, what is an affective state that happens through engaging with nature and noticing the feelings of being in nature. And then the compassion that includes the nature in the self and having the moral and ethical concern for the nature. That is also then linked quite strongly with the sustainability issues. So this is what we have been looking at. What are the issues that come up with nature-based experiences? What are the ones that lead to certain kind of experiences in terms of well-being, but also in terms of change? And what we also found out is that it's not also the amount of time that is spent in nature, but how the time is spent in nature. So also with the need to notice and engage with nature for well-being outcomes to be felt. So this is something that is coming more and more. And I think this is also something that is very important to look now also from the business perspective if you are developing this kind of services or providing this kind of services. Which leads us to the tourism services and service providers. And of course, as I mentioned, they're already developing services. So of course, this theme includes also a lot of different research avenues, starting from this experience design, also business management, responsibility in tourism business, entrepreneurship, well-being of staff, emotional labor issues, and so on. So there are a lot of different issues that you can look into this theme. But what also put here was certain research directions that are already happening in our research group, but also I think that are very topical to continue with in the forthcoming years, is naturally the experience design in nature-based tourism, as there are more and more customer insight on the topic related to the nature-based tourism, related to well-being issues on nature, how to integrate these into experience design. And this also goes to how to develop and design transformative experiences. But also how tourism supply can support the sustainability goals in more general, and also how to mainstream sustainable tourism. This has been highlighted in previous studies and from the field that is it enough that certain businesses are sustainable, but how this can be also mainstream instead of something special. So these are the topics, and there are different ways to how to also approach this. Also, issues related to corporate social responsibility. There are a lot of different, and the responsibility communications is also part of that discussions, but also looking at a more broader perspective and looking the different sustainability dimensions, as we were talking about, what is actually then the issues that is focused on the business, what is focused in the business operations, but naturally we also have a lot of new kind of businesses, social entrepreneurs, and how they link to the tourism discussions too. But also then the adoption of the technological solutions in tourism services, in business activities, and how they can help also to provide different nature-based tourism services and develop them further, but also market and sell this kind of services through different channels. Here's also example, one of the studies that have been now conducted that looked at tourism firms' willingness to contribute to maintaining their own operational environment. And this is actually a quote from one of the interviews that was made during the study, trying to understand how the businesses see and feel, what are the core resources that they have in the destination, and what is the meaning of these resources for them and what they're willing to do. As this quote actually shows that the certain natural resources like animal and plant species are seen not just as a nature resource, but also part of the local culture. That includes different stories, prophecies, beliefs that are the authentic content for the tourism products that they have in the region. And this is something that they don't need to be scripted. So it's something that is there already, and they can be integrated into the offerings quite easily. But then if the certain species are lost, it also seems they feel that also part of the culture and social capital will be deteriorated. So it's not just for the looking the nature and saving the nature itself for the tourism or for the businesses, but also for more closely to the local this kind of social, from the social aspect in the destination. So in this study, we also looked at to more detailed what are the perceptions of tourism firm of their role to safeguard the nature and related cultural ecosystem services that are utilized in nature products. And this was also looking more on what are the different tools that have been utilized for doing this kind of activity. and looking the different motivation and willingness and what would enable them to participate in these kind of activities on safeguarding these the operational environment. Then when we look at the destination and policy level, of course, there are a lot of discussions related to destination competitiveness, how the natural resources are linked to that. Also, the stakeholder collaboration, power structures in tourism also, and also measuring the impacts on tourism policies and tourism strategies at the destination level. But also when we are looking at from the nature-based tourism point of view, and also related to the global challenges that we have, I think that the discussion is also from the field is to how can we actually go towards carbon neutral tourism? What is needed also in the destination level to be able to at least get closer to these very ambitious goals? And for this, is also one of the things is these new local initiatives and their credibility is one of the things that need to be considered. I will talk a bit more about that during the next slide. But also looking the changes in destination competitiveness. So what are the different mitigation and adapting to changing climate conditions? I was mentioning that if you're losing snow cover, how you can adapt to that. What are then the alternative ways to work, but also that these issues in biodiversity and linked to the global warming can also impact quite a lot. For example, water quality would also impact then to tourism experience, but also to the whole environment. And also tackling the biodiversity loss, what can be done? What is actually that also tourism sector can be done for tackling this issue? We know that there are certain examples in certain countries that tourism activities are, and the income that is coming from there is supporting nature protection, for example, but also in those areas that are not the protected areas, what can be done in tourism business, for example, and in the operational environment to tackling this biodiversity loss. Also, related to this, naturally we talk about the influence of different policies and strategies on tourism development at national and regional levels. We know that in Finland we have a national, in Visit Finland we have a Sustainable Travel Finland scheme. So there are certain tools that can be used in governmental level or policy level to try to direct these activities to the certain direction. Also, currently there is now a study ongoing that tries to also look what might be this kind of biodiversity, respect or leadership in tourism and in nature-based tourism, how this could be promoted and what are different ways to enhance that. This is one example then about the studies that have been done. So looking the different tourism-related payments of ecosystem services models. So currently there's only little research on this topic, and especially from looking at from tourism firm perspective or destination perspective in more broader sense. Many of these studies that have looked this topic is looking how willing tourists are pay for certain activities, for example, saving certain or providing certain living space for turtles or trying to keep beaches clean in certain destinations. So, but looking in more broader sense, these payments of ecosystem services models are quite new issue, and there is a need for further discussions of the role of these local PES models in sustainable tourism and land use policies, and also looking about their scalability, evaluation of effectiveness, also how to combine diverse ecosystem services in one model, because quite oftenly they have been focusing on certain very narrow topic. And one of the studies that have been looking into this is this initiative that have been developed here in Finland related to landscape and recreation value trade in Kuusamo. This picture is actually about from this scheme, so that was piloted in this Ruka-Kuusamo area. And the aim was to help to maintain the beautiful landscapes and biodiversity of the forest that are privately owned, so not officially protected by government organizations. And this model aimed to safeguard the environmental values of the forest and also sustain the prerequisites of nature-based tourism. And for doing that, it compensated those local landowners that they want a clear-cut their forest, but maintain them certain way that it benefits the landscape and also the tourist experience at the destination level. So these mainly focuses then, it brings together different cultural ecosystem services too. So looking at the landscape, also the recreational value and nature values in forests, but also including the biodiversity issues and also then the carbon offsetting. So I think that discussing of the role of tourism industry on maintaining the natural resources and what can be or are the tools that they are able to do that is very central, and trying to look more into that also. And now I see Juho's video is on. Oh, don't worry, I'm almost done. This is also then now looking at giving you this quick overview for different topics that I think that are very interesting to be looked at, but also they are very much linked to the issue, what can be done from the customer point of view, what can be done from the business point of view, but also from broader the destination perspective, and what are the issues that you should or we should be looking at also in the next few years. And for that, I would also encourage you to consider and try to think when you are developing your research, when you are doing your studies, trying to figure out what you do in your master thesis or how you are implementing these issues in practice already as a business or as a tourism operator, how you can also make tourism better by looking at these different aspects and trying to enhance the sustainability issues. Thank you. 25 minutes, I think.
Perfect timing. Thank you so much. There's a bit of echo coming from your side. Okay, now it's fine. There's no questions, but if anybody have questions, please ask in the chat. I think Henna will be here discussing with us at least for a while on these nature tourism topics. But one let's say a question with a bit lighter note is that you are also an avid nature tourist yourself and have studied the possibilities of increasing your well-being through nature tourism. So what would you advise us others to do as nature tourists in order for us to, increase our well-being the most? How to do nature tourism correctly? Is there such a thing as doing it correctly?
Well, of course, this is subjective experience, what we have been talking about. But for those that are used to go to the nature and have using that also in their everyday lives, and don't necessarily think that is something too special, but try next time when you go there, stop for a while in the certain place and try to use all of your senses. You might get very different kind of experience that in the basic walk in the nature.
That's actually excellent. Excellent thing. So we are typically really hurry in our society also when we are doing nature tourism. So slowing down, and nature provides fantastic opportunities for that. Thank you, Henna. Once again, we are continuing with the program, but if you have any questions or comments for Henna, please use the chat function. It should be available for everybody. And the next presentation we have is from our postdoctoral researcher Olga Hannonen, who is already ready there. Fantastic. Welcome, Olga. And we are really looking forward for hearing your presentation on digital nomad visas, attracting new traveler segments.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can see my slides.
Yeah, everything.
And we have a fantastic composition of visitors today. I see over 30 people are joining from China. So today I will be talking about work in progress, as I've been studying digital nomads for quite some time already. And one of the most recent insights or sides to digital nomadism is digital nomad visas and how it's a way to attract a new traveler segment. So when I talk about digital nomads, I usually start with a basic definition, and this slide I've been showing for quite some time already. So the term has been introduced by Makimoto in Manners in 1997. Here you can see the print screen from their book, the main page of their book, the cover page. So what are these digital nomads? Whom are we talking about? So digital nomad describes a category of mobile professionals who perform their work remotely from anywhere in the world utilizing digital technologies, while digital nomadism refers to this lifestyle that is developed by these highly mobile location independent professionals. So when we look at digital nomadism as a travel trend and remote work travel trend, we can trace two parallel trends. One is the bottom-up approach, when the digital nomadism has started as a phenomena, as a bottom-up approach. People started to travel, were pulled and pushed by various factors. So they tend to congregate in specific places around the world. And these so-called hotspots for digital nomads. So they started to promote these destinations through their own information channels, Facebook groups, social media channels, and one of the most well-known channel or web page is nomadlist.com. And here you can see on the upper picture is a print screen from the nomadlist.com. And as for yesterday, you can see 8 most popular destinations for digital nomads. And this is a bottom-up, let's say, initiative, how they promote the destinations and how destinations become popular through their own word of mouth and electronic word of mouth. The other trend is the top-down approach, and we know that destinations and tourism industries have quickly responded to digital nomadism and started to promote themselves as ideal locations for remote work and for digital nomads. They offer a variety of products and programs that are designed specifically for this traveler segment, and these include co-working and co-living spaces, different gatherings, retreats, digital nomad conferences, leisure programs, healthcare programs, and others. One of the most recent changes have become digital nomad visa, and that has become an additional attractions, a way to attract and market a destination as a digital nomad friendly, as a digital nomad hub. And here you can see the print screen from the Digital Nomad Madeira Islands program that's specifically designed to position Madeira as a digital nomad hub. So when we talk about digital nomad visa, this is definitely a top-down initiative, a national initiative to attract more digital nomads to a particular country and destination within a country. But it also serves the first trend, this bottom-up approach that these destinations that have become already popular with nomads, now they are supported with these national initiatives of digital nomad visa. And here we can bring an example of Bali in Indonesia. As you can see on the from the print screen, number 2, the most popular destination is Canggu, Bali. and Bali is a world-known destination for digital nomads. So now Indonesia is launching a digital nomad visa that would definitely serve this group, this crowd of digital nomads who are already present in Bali. So digital nomad visa serves both. It's in a way a top-down approach that also serves pretty much the bottom-up trend in digital nomadism. So what do we mean when we talk about digital nomad visa? We can define digital nomad visa as a collective category for residence permit for remote workers that are employed somewhere else other than in a destination country and have sufficient funds to stay in the destination. So we can find different names for this digital nomad visa. It's called, in addition to digital nomad visa, nomad digital residence, white card, digital nomad residence permit, and premium visa, and some other names you can come across. So when we talk about digital nomad visa, we actually should talk about a residence permit. So it's not a visa, not a tourist visa in its classical understanding, because tourist visa is typically a short-term stay up to 3 months, while digital nomad visa presumes that you stay in the destination for at least 1 year. Since one of the destinations started to talk about digital nomad visa, others pick up, so it's seemingly a more understandable term for potential customers, even though it's not a visa in a traditional understanding. So you can see also here, I put a couple of print screens about this from the travel blogs, that you can see how the wording of these headings are 21 countries with digital nomad visa, 41 countries with digital nomad visas. So a list of the destinations that you can choose from if you want to apply or use this scheme to stay in a particular destination. So here I brought, as we see, that up to 41 countries offer what is called digital nomad visa. So here I listed some of the destinations to give you some scope what we are talking about. So Estonia, the first in the list, was a pioneering country to offer digital nomad visa. So in June 2020, it announced a digital nomad visa for freelancers and remote workers. And the Minister of Interior, Mert Helme, back in 2020, stated that thanks to the new visa for remote workers, Estonia hopes to attract more visitors and boost local economy without giving up local jobs. And if you look at Croatia, that is second in the list. So the reason Croatia introduced digital nomad visa was to secure visitors flow also off-season. And Croatia introduced digital nomad visa, as most of the digital nomad visas, they appeared during the pandemic. So it's a very recent phenomenon within the last 2 years. We are talking that this is very, very new. So Croatia, that is heavily dependent on tourist flow, which is very seasonal. So they decided to also keep other travelers or attract travelers also off-season. And since digital nomads travel year-round, that was a specific target for Croatia. And that definitely brings additional boost to local economy through service consumption and accommodation. So here you can see in this table, and I see a lot of comments coming in chat. Anyway, in the table, let's see, I put main criteria for digital nomad visa. So you can see that the length is mostly 1 year, and it varies in different destinations. Monthly income threshold also varies between destinations. And I must say that now everyone can think whether we are qualified to be a digital nomad somewhere like Estonia or Greece, for example, whether our income is sufficient enough for that. A very interesting notion with digital nomad visa as again, we are talking about a residence permit to stay for 1 year in a destination. And if residence permit usually presume that you have some connection to a destination from where you apply your residence permit. So the condition for digital nomad visa that you should be employed outside the destination. So if you apply for a digital nomad visa in Estonia, you should be employed outside Estonia. In Greece, you should be employed outside Greece. So that's one of the most common requirements for all digital nomad visas. Other conditions include also proof of sufficient funds or employment, health insurance. Visa costs also vary, and as well as I mentioned, we have different names for what is called collectively as digital nomad visa. Also, I should mention that in this list that includes 41 countries with digital nomad visas, we also have countries that do not really have a digital nomad visa. For example, Germany can be found in the list, but Germany offers, in fact, a freelance visa that presumes that you have clients in Germany and also registered with German tax office. Well, this can definitely serve some of the digital nomads, but this visa scheme doesn't really serve the phenomenon at large, presuming that you maybe have employment in one country or in several countries, have your tax resident again in a very different country, and you extensively travel between different destinations. A similar thing can be mentioned about Czech Republic, that is also in the list of these 41 countries. But when we go into details, we see that this is not really a digital nomad visa. And for example, as I mentioned, Madeira, that develops digital nomad project and specifically promotes itself as a digital nomad destination. Madeira belongs to Portugal, and Portugal doesn't really have a digital nomad visa. So there are interesting intersections and tendencies are going on when we look at digital nomad visas and destination developments and attracting this traveler segment. So as I said, this is pretty much work in progress, so I do not give you specific outcomes, but generally draw some important conclusions about digital nomad visa to this point. So when we look at digital nomad visa, again, we should remember that this is something that appeared during the pandemic. So it was definitely a big effect on the notion and on the speeding up the process with digital nomad visas for many countries. So a digital nomad visa has become a public sector service for new traveler segment, a unique crafted solution to meet the demand. It has become a solution both for receiving states that were suffering from tourist loss during the COVID-19 pandemic. So it was a measure to attract long-term visitors at the destination. But it also became a solution for nomads themselves, as previously they were choosing and navigating between different visa regimes and usually traveling to visa-free destinations. And visa-free destinations usually allow you to stay up to 90 days or 3 months. So after that, you have to continue to a different destination, again, based on their entry requirements and on the length of stay. And during the pandemic, in addition to this visa navigation, you had to navigate also pandemic health regimes that would require maybe proof of vaccination, or you should travel to a destination and show negative PCR test, or have to do some screens for health symptoms. So in addition to navigating visas, you had to navigate, or digital nomads had to navigate also these health regimes. So, and digital nomad visa has become a solution to stay in a destination instead of traveling further and maybe take some unnecessary travel-related health risks during the pandemic by changing destination every 3 months. Digital nomad visa also serves a broader category of individuals. And here I would like to bring an example of Madeira Islands. In Portugal, that also attracts those people who would like to try this lifestyle of being digital nomads while they are settled somewhere, but they come to the island and as remote workers and professionals just to try what digital nomadism is, how this lifestyle is. Also, digital nomad visas increase the competitiveness of the destination. And this is something what Makimoto and Manners, the authors of the Digital Nomad book in 1997, they have predicted that countries would compete for citizens in the future. And this is something what we also witness these days. I would like to conclude by saying that considering recent developments in tourism infrastructures, in destination infrastructures, as we can find these working co-living spaces, different services that geared specifically for digital nomads, as well as growing number of countries that are launching digital nomad visa. I think that not only nations, but also specific sites will compete for long-term travelers and digital nomads. Thank you.
Thank you, Olga. Perfect timing as well, and really interesting topic that tourism is now changing. And one of the things that we just discussed in this first week with our new tourism marketing management student was this, that how do you define tourism in the future when traditionally it's been that you move outside your local or normal living environment, but digital nomads, what's their normal typical living environment when they are moving around the world all the time and changing their location and not be like belonging to anything. And I think this is a really relevant topic in that way, that this is like at the forefront of the changes that are happening in tourism, like the core changes regarding mobility and geography and also marketing experiences, all of these topics.
And how we define tourists these days.
Exactly, yeah.
Who is a tourist?
Is digital nomad a tourist or a local, and do we need to revise the definitions for that case or not? So but there's Eric asking in the chat that does Finland have a digital nomad program? How's the situation in Finland regarding digital nomads?
I would say that Finland is a sending country for digital nomads, not a receiving destination. Unfortunately, yeah, it's that Finland doesn't have a specific digital nomad program, and I haven't heard any possible visa discussions. As we know, Finland is in the European Union, so most of the travelers who come outside the European Union and European Economic Area, they can stay only up to 3 months in Finland. So, but those who come from, let's say, Western countries, so there is no such problem for them to stay. They can stay whenever they want, like as long as they want.
But Estonia has a digital nomad visa, right?
Yeah, many European destinations now, like EU destinations, having or launching digital nomad visa. So, yeah,
has there been any information how successful these initiatives have been? Like, have digital nomads accepted this new way of belonging, you could say, and have they applied for these visas? How big thing is this?
I didn't see any numbers for Estonia. Probably, well, I didn't look specifically, but it seems it's also a door in a way to stay in the European space at large. So it seems to be a popular way to also to go to Estonia and also travel within the European Union as well. So, which is, there've been, Estonia has been listed as a popular destination if you look at the Nomad list, or has been mentioned many times when in the discussion forums as a digital nomad friendly.
And Finland hasn't, so this is really interesting.
Yeah,
that now.
But also we have to remember for Estonia the income threshold is 3,500 euros, or about that. So I mean, you really need to be employed, have a, you know,
really good employment,
really good and stable income. So, you know, freelancing or other, you know, random jobs might not qualify you for a digital nomad in this visa scheme, from the visa scheme perspective.
But
okay, there is.
I think we have to move on with the program. But Olga, please continue in the chat with our guests and the next presentation. Thank you once more. And the next presentation is from Tuuli Pulkkinen, one of our PhD researchers, and her topic is interesting as well. One of the cornerstones of Finnish culture, the mythology of Kalevala, and how that is related to tourism business development. So Tuuli, please go ahead.
Thank you, Juho. I suppose that you can see my presentation and hear me.
Yes, everything is working as intended.
Great. So good evening or day to everyone. As said, my name is Tuuli Pulkkinen, and I'm a project researcher and a PhD researcher here in University of Eastern Finland in business school in the tourism business research group. And this, what I'm presenting here today, what Juho already mentioned, this Kalevala project is something that I've been working on as a project researcher. So this is not related to my PhD research, but this project is something that I've been working on for almost 2 years now. And I will go through a little bit of what type of research we have been doing in this project and less about the actual results, because this research procedure that we have been doing is very interesting. And hopefully, if someone of you gets interested about this project, you will also come to hear about the results in our webinars that are coming later this year. But now, as I realized that I didn't add any information about Kalevala itself to my presentation, so I will just very shortly describe what this Kalevala concept is, because some of our international audiences probably do not understand what this Kalevala actually means and what I'm talking about. So Kalevala is the national epic of Finland, and it is telling the story of world creation and other folklores of Finland. And this amazing fountain of stories, mythologies, and traditions has been the founding father of this project that we have, and the inspiration for further tourism development in North Karelia, what we have been doing in this project. All right. My slide, okay, now it changed, good. So, of course, we have to first answer the question, what is this project about? What is the Voyage to Mythology Kalevala project about? And this is an EU-funded, so European Regional Development Fund funded project, which is led by Karelia University of Applied Sciences. And then University of Eastern Finland is another very important partner here, and what work we have been doing here. And the purpose of this project was to and is to create this new and attracting and exciting image of this Kalevala spirit and the heritage of Kalevala to boost tourism in North Karelia. And how we have been trying to do this is by providing local companies tools, information for new product, service, and experience design development, and how to utilize this mythology, local stories, and traditions as part of tourism products. And what UEF has been doing, and what I have been doing for the past 2 years in this project, is the research on customer insights to help these development processes. And our main target markets have been focusing on Asia. So we have China, Japan, and South Korea. But now we are also employing this research to Germany during this autumn. So we have quite wide target markets for this research. But for the Asian countries, we have already done the research, but now we are then employing it to Germany as well during this autumn. So, all right, now with that, a little bit of background after that little bit of background information, we can actually dive into this research procedure and what we have actually been doing. And as you can see here, here is a little infographic of our procedures, and I know the text is quite small there, but no worries, I will explain it to you, so you only just have to listen to me. So roughly our research was divided into these 3 blocks, with 2 parts of which are sort of this background research, and then the last block is our grand finale that we've been doing last spring. And how we started the research process was doing literature reviews as background research on these target markets. So for example, we wanted to know about just travel in general, what type of travel behavior these target markets would have. Are there any peculiarities in their travel behavior, or how they, for example, see stories or mythologies in traveling, or even in their general lives. So to get this sort of very strong foundation that we know who are our customers and what type of peculiarities they have in tourism and in these stories and mythologies as well. And these literature reviews were the foundation for our next research procedure, which was the thematic interviews. And these interviews were also part of this background research. And the purpose of these interviews was to determine how do the target markets see or experience Kalevala and tourism themes together. And for this, we employed interviewees that were originally from the target markets. So now the Japan, South Korea, and China, and of course the Germany as well. And who had been living in Finland for quite some time already. And the reason for this was that we wanted for them to have the knowledge of their own country's perception of these tourism themes and Kalevala, possibly how they would see it, but also that they had some sort of contextual idea about Finnish culture and this Kalevala perception as well. And then lastly, we come to this grand finale that I've been talking about, which was virtual product testing. And the purpose of this virtual product testing was to determine how interesting different Kalevala-style travel themes would be for the target groups. And in this virtual product testing, we created three bigger umbrella themes, tourism themes, that we then tested as the foundation for tourism products. And these 3 themes were created based on the workshops that we held during the project with local companies, but also we utilized this background research and the knowledge that we had already gained from there. And this virtual product testing was done as an experimental design, but I'm going to tell you more about that in a bit. And first, we will look into the product themes that we created, because now you know what we actually did, and now you are of course eager to know what these product themes and the virtual product testing really was. So I will introduce these very quickly. So these 3 themes that we created were Kalevala sauna bath, well-being retreat in Eastern Finland, and live like a local in North Karelia. And what we did for the virtual product testing was that we wrote a textual, storified forms of each of these 3 themes and utilized some images to further give expression of the themes. So the product theme that we were testing and the respondents were evaluating and examining was the textual form of the theme and then a picture as well. And this created the basic backbone for the research. And in the textual form, the bigger picture, like the possible services and products and experiences connected to the theme, were presented. And so very shortly to introduce these 3 themes. So in sauna bath, the idea was the traveler visits different types of saunas around the North Karelian region, and that sauna experience is the backbone for that product theme. And then we had these mythical creatures and mysticality were also brought forward in the theme as sort of from that Kalevala umbrella. Then we had well-being retreat in Eastern Finland, where the idea was that the traveler goes to search for these empowering effects of nature from Finland, that is the land of forests and lakes. And in here, well-being and healing were in focus, as well as this nature connection, which again came from that Kalevala connection then. And then lastly, we had live like a local in North Karelia, where the idea was that the traveler gets situated in this small rural village where they can experience the true life of a Finn, and then again gain these very memorable, immersive cultural experiences. And this is what our respondents were examining and evaluating. And now to go back to that experimental design for the research. So these three themes that I just presented, they were the basic themes and basic backbone for our research. But because we also wanted to know if this Kalevala aspect would bring any new value to the tourism products, we wanted to do something different with the research. So instead only testing the basic themes that we created, we also employed this Kalevala enhanced version of these product themes. And this was very simply made. So we just added direct quotations from Kalevala that are relevant for the theme. So for example, with the sauna bath, we added quotations about sauna into the beginning and end of the story theme. And otherwise, everything was the same structure. So the textual form of the basic backbone of the theme was the same, questionnaire was the same, background information and introduction to the product testing, everything was the same. Only the added quotations of Kalevala was something new in the research. And this is how we hope to get some more insight of how Kalevala should be utilized in tourism products, services, and experiences. And for the respondents, what we gained was that we got 100 responses for each format, so the basic theme and then the Kalevala enhanced themes. We got 100 responses from each country of these 3 Asian countries, so 600 responses altogether. And during this autumn, we are then going to do the same with the German, so we get 100 responses for the basic format and then 100 for the Kalevala enhanced format. Then I will give you some results and some discussion of the results to think about. I'm not going to go too deep into this, as I said, that we are going to present the results later on during this autumn. But something that we discovered was that during this research process, we saw that Kalevala, being as it is, it might be too hard to understand because of the cultural connections are so strong. And it might be hard to get into that and understand that if you are just traveling here to Finland. But the spice, tourism products and services and experiences, there might be something interesting for the target market as well. So in other words, simply experiencing Finnish lifestyle and Finnish culture might already be something very unique and very exotic for the travelers, and they don't necessarily need any of this deeper connection like Kalevala to experience. Another interesting point of view that we discovered was these levels of involvement in experiencing culture. So we saw from the respondents that we had different types of travelers, so different, and they wanted to experience culture in different ways. And we formatted these 3 levels of experiencing culture. So we had just experiencing the local culture, which means that you are just having a little bit of taste, trying the local food and trying some traditional fun or something like this, having a very low level of involvement with the culture. Then we have interacting with local culture, where you are actually doing something to interact with the culture. You are, for example, talking with the local residents or having a little bit of more connection to the actual culture. Then we have the immersion of local culture, which is of course the highest level of involvement, where you just jump right in and immerse yourself with the local culture. And this is something that was brought forward very strongly in the Live Like a Local theme, for example. A little bit of continuing with the results was that an important realization that we found out was the differentiation of tourism products and services and Finland or North Karelia in exact, and how to promote our uniqueness and attractiveness. So what this means is that we discovered that some of our respondents felt that, for example, sauna, which is often seen as a unique tourism aspect because it's so deeply rooted in our culture, and nature, which again we see something very as a strong point of our tourism industry, they are not necessarily as novel or attractive as we might think. So, for example, in Asian cultures, they have sometimes very distinguished sauna or spa cultures of their own. And what we saw in our product testing was that when we were just talking about sauna, the respondents were sometimes misunderstanding it as their own type of sauna and spa culture. And they didn't necessarily understand what was novel about Finnish sauna. So we might want to think about this type of questions to how to bring forward the cultural context of Finnish sauna and why sauna is culturally important to us. And then again, with nature, the similar kind of experiences were brought forward that, for example, there were respondents that were saying that why would I come to Finland to experience this nature, because I can have it in my own country or some other country which is more easily accessible for them. So we need to think about what it is in our these strong points of tourism products and services. What is unique about them and how do we bring those forward? And then again, one last thing was the Kalevala. So Kalevala itself, with the stories and all the things that are attached to that, many of our respondents thought that it was very universal. So it might be easier for people to also connect to those Kalevala stories because they might be able to find those all over the world. But then again, what is unique about Kalevala? And this is something that we might need to think about if we want to combine tourism and Kalevala together. Thank you. I have spoken and I gave you some sneak peeks of our results. Hopefully I will see many of you joining our webinar later this year, and you can find more information about our project and everything that we have been doing from our website, kalevala/karelia.fi. There is no information about the webinar yet there, but I'm hoping that we will have the dates set as soon as possible, and you will hear more about our research and our results in there. But thank you. That was everything that I had to say.
Thank you, Tuuli, for presenting the initial result, and we are definitely looking forward for hearing it all, so to say. But I think you have like something really important, or we have something really important here with the previous slide of this importance of nature tourism. That basically the most of the Finnish tourism marketing is actually based on the idea that we have a unique and wonderful nature and people should come to Finland because of its nature. Whereas this perspective has not been questioned enough, and I think your data on these very important international market segments really point out some crucial aspects of the nature, that there is nature everywhere on this planet, that why out of all of these nature destinations in the world, people should come to Finland, if what makes our nature not just different, but also beneficial for the customer in a completely different way that no other nature can do. And I think that's a big question for tourism marketers and destinations and businesses in Finland to explain that what's the benefit of Finnish nature compared to all the other natures in the world for nature-based tourists. So probably you will gain some insights once you start analyzing the data and move forward for it. But I think this is a really important contribution in this line of research in us understanding what nature actually means for international tourists.
Definitely. Thank you, Juho.
Tuuli will stay on the chat as well. So if you have any questions or comments regarding Tuuli's presentation, please use the chat. There is already an active discussion ongoing there, and we really warmly welcome the discussion to continue. But we're going to continue today's program with our postdoctoral researcher, Jarno, who has studied the experiential value of participation in angling competition. And thank you, Jarno, for coming, and looking forward for your presentation.
Thank you very much. I guess you can hear me and you can see my slides. So hello everyone, my name is Jarno Suni and I am a postdoctoral researcher at the UEF Business School. I'm working with our tourism marketing management program, and half of my time I'm actually a UEF water research communities coordinator. And since we are part of this big community, we are doing our part, and we are also doing research related to water. And this study, which is quite recently just published, experiential value of participation in angling competition, a study from Finland. In this presentation, I will show you the key points of the study quite shortly. And actually, the good thing about European Journal of Tourism Research, it's an open access, so you can find this paper from example from Google Scholar quite easily, so you can study it more deeply. But let's begin. I think I have some like 20 slides or more, so let's start and try to stay on the schedule. Okay, so introduction. What is competitive angling? Maybe most of us know what it is, but there are these competition organized events where anglers compete against each other and their fish for inducements, which may vary from material or monetary prizes to awards and public recognition. So sometimes you don't even have exactly an award, but it's good to have some kind of recognition.
Jarno, you're...
Yeah, I noticed. So so maybe you just want to be recognized as very competitive fisher. I'm not going to say fisherman, but fisher person. So there are domestic events, of course. There are a lot of international events. People are traveling for these events quite long distances. And when we were gathering, doing the literature review, we're trying to find specific data, how many events are going on, but there are no exactly some clear statistics, so to say, but there are thousands events annually in Europe and in Scandinavia, but at least for USA, we find quite something around 25,000 events a year. This was in 2019. Of course, COVID influenced these competitions during recent years. So, but angling itself is quite popular worldwide, but there were not so many studies specifically about competition angling and when it's combined to tourism. There are a lot of studies about recreational fishing or recreational angling. I tend to use nowadays more about this word angling, which means that you are fishing, having the fishing rod and the line and the hook and the bait. So you are not, these nets are not doing, and we want to separate commercial fishing and this kind of things from this concept. So I'm using fishing angling maybe synonymously in this presentation. But yeah, so competitive angling and tourism not very often combined in studies. So in these studies, participation in an angling competition is understood as a tourist experience, which means that you go to the competition and you are actually staying overnight during this competition. Even if it's one day, it's very common that these competition are only day trips. But if you're traveling longer distances, of course, then you are most likely have to stay at the location or the destination overnight. We were using this consumption value theory by Seth Newman and Gross as a framework. And because we wanted to find out what is valued in the angling competition related tourism. And these values, I'm trying to simply describe what are functional, social, emotional, epistemic, and conditional values. So functional value is something that as Seth and Newman Gross put it, it's that the product works as it should be. So it's functional. It gives the value that it should sense. So this this angling tourism experience should function as well. So as it gives you will go to the competition, everything works as intended, you will catch some fish and maybe you will win or maybe you will lose. Social value is something related to perhaps reputation, self-esteem, like if you win the competition, you get the recognition, and this is how you will get social value. Then emotional value, it means that this experience gives you some sort of emotion. Usually we are looking for positive emotions. Sometimes there are negative emotions also involved. Of course, we don't want those. Most likely in competition, you get disappointed if you don't win, and you get super happy if you win. Then epistemic value is related to novelty, that you will find something new, you will learn something new during this experience. And conditional values are related to things that are maybe constraining the experience or something that are enabling the experience. So for example, if you don't have to travel too long distance to the destination, then maybe this conditional value is higher. But then we also wanted to add the value of togetherness to this framework and look how it works. You might think that togetherness is related to social, but it's been argued that togetherness is different from this social value, since togetherness is more like actually being close to people and doing something together, and the social value was more related to this overall reputation or recognition and things like this. So we wanted to distinguish the value dimensions which are related to this angling competition tourism experience, and then we wanted to see what type of different groups or what are the differences between the participants related to, for example, frequency of participation and type of angling competition, travel competition, and so on. So we did this study with Finnish anglers. Study area for is Finland. In Finland, we have several angling contests of different types, organized almost every weekend throughout the year. Like you see, traditional float angling, coarse angling, ice angling, or ice fishing, fly fishing, and so on. Typically, number of participants 30 to 300, but there are also some bigger events can go up to 1,500 anglers. And ice angling, ice fishing competitions are the most popular in Finland. And for this study, we used a web survey. We wanted to do a pen and paper survey. We already printed out all the forms, but then COVID came and all the competitions were cancelled, so we had to change the data collection methods. We gathered some 532 respondents for these, and which over 55% were actually had experienced an overnight domestic or an international angling competition trip within the last 2 years. And for all these value dimensions, we used 45 different variables or statements, which then the respondents evaluated with either 1 to 7 used Likert scale, where 1 was strongly disagree and 7 was strongly agree. And then we used then principal component analysis and cluster analysis for separating the groups and then testing the differences with then ANOVA tests. Hopefully you can see this. So most of the respondents were males. Men, which is quite typical also for fishing hobby or fishing activity. Most of fishers are men in Finland. I would say age-wise, quite even distribution, of course, under age 18 and 18 to 24 were less in this study. Area of residence quite evenly distributed. Then relationship, meaning that you are in a relationship, living with someone, and you have children living at home. And the other second option was that you are in a relationship, married or not, but then no children living at home. Maybe you were single parent. Education-wise, quite evenly distributed, and also annual gross earnings. Of course, those who are not so old wouldn't earn so much money. But this was the socio-demographic data for this, and some notes from what kind of anglers these people were. Number of years participating in angling competition, mean value 25. So number of days spent on angling competition in a year, 35. So I would say we have quite active respondents for this. Even during winter, average number of winter season competitions 16, open water meaning summer 13, and then the times traveled and they spent. I would say these are quite experienced overall people. So of course, some people do more competitions than others. I have heard stories that some people, if possible, almost every weekend go to some kind of competition. So very serious angling competitors can be. Like I said previously, ice fishing is the most popular, and it also was the favorite method for these respondents. Of course, doing angling competition trips is most commonly in Finland, so domestic trips, but people have been traveling abroad. Sweden, Estonia, the closest countries, and some of the trips were then more further away, but they were a minority. And most typically, competition trips are done with friends or either spouses or alone. So this principal component analysis, during the analysis, some variables drop out. I'm not going to go too into specifics how these analyses work, but overall, from all these variables that were used, we found 11 components: enjoyment, social value, novelty and learning, solitude, well-being, constraints, family, friendship, the need to catch large fish, keeping the catch, and competition arrangement. And like I said, this study is freely available. So if you want to look more deep what these components, how the components are built, you can find it in the paper. I don't think I have time now to go through everything, and I want to avoid very big tables. But we have 11 components, and then using the components, we differentiated the respondents into 3 clusters or 3 groups, and then named them based on what they were valuing the most, or what was the most differentiating component for the group. So The groups were named well-being seekers, family-oriented, and novelty seekers. A lot of numbers here, but just shortly showing that the novelty seekers, except for competition arrangement, which was very highly important for everyone, for novelty seekers, the novelty and learning was the highest, so that's why novelty seekers was named like they are, and for family oriented, the family component was the highest from all of the groups. And also then for well-being seekers, even when the family oriented also considered well-being important, but we chose to say that this was the most important then for the first group, the well-being seekers. What are then the other difference in between the groups? So the family-oriented competitors were the most active angling competition participants. This was most likely explained because they had most elderly respondents. And if you are a pension, you have a lot of time and so on, you can be active in angling competitions. And also because being this older group, the responders didn't have children living at home. And the novelty seekers were the most youngest, and therefore they had the least experience, and they did not compete as much as the other groups. Most likely they had more activities, so on to do, but the experience was here measured with the number of years participating, that they spent in the competitions and the number of competitions done. Then the ice fishing, like I said, was the most common type for well-being seekers, family-oriented, but actually then novelty seekers here were actually more varied. So it also kind of supports this naming as a novelty seekers. They are doing a lot more other types of, or have other favorite competition method, angling methods. So they are looking varied experiences. Friends were the typical travel companions for the competitions, but then for family-oriented, the spouses were also typical companions. So younger competition anglers are looking for novelty and consider learning important. As an example, for an implication, the event organizers could create different competition categories using only certain type of fishing methods to ensure that there would be possible for new challenges and learning opportunities. Considering competitors who are looking for solitude, like the group family-oriented, the event location could be big enough to avoid unnecessary crowdedness. Catching fish, of course, is a requirement for the participant to succeed in the competition. However, these results showed that the role of catching fish per se seems to be a minor contributor to the fishing competition experience value. So maybe for event organizations, it is possible to create a satisfying fishing competition event, even if there are not so many fish in the area. So there should be some amount of fish, of course, but even when there are not so many fishers in the area, it could be that you could have a nice competition. And we do suggest that the value of togetherness could be a valuable addition to this framework, especially when examining special interest tourism activities like this competition angling. And of course, equal and proper competition arrangements played the most important role. You don't want to play the game that is rigged, that what is not fair. This is not like a surprise result, but it has to be mentioned that this was very highly rated and people consider equal and proper competition arrangement very important. So this study can be found online. Some other studies we have conducted, and most likely we will stick with this fishing tourism topic in the eastern Finland. We have very nice lakeland area, and if I read recent news correctly, I think Finnish government also would like to support fishing tourism in the eastern Finland area, but there was no news yet how this would be practically executed. But let's hope we can continue doing fishing tourism studies in eastern Finland. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jarno, for, let's say, a different kind of sport event, this angling tourism than what we have or are used to. Did you by chance compare your results with other like competitions that people typically take part of? That is there something really special in angling competitions compared to other forms of competitions that are happening all around us all the time?
Not. I wouldn't say there are lots of differences. So the competition is a competition. So there is that's the point why you are going to the event to compete. But it was quite nice, I would say, to find out that actually the competition was not so important for everyone. So there was this statement that we asked that should the competition, there was how we formulate the fishing competition should not be too serious, and people said that that's quite important. So it is nice to compete, but then again, okay. But sometimes you just want to have fun and enjoy the event as such. I think this relates probably to other competitions as well.
Are all angling competitions like not so serious, or are there like different kinds of competitions? Like I would imagine there's like World Championship or something like that,
Sure.
where only like really serious.
Yes. Of course, there are different type of competition like that. There's really different levels, and there are different type of competitors, of course. So, but I wouldn't say like ice fishing was the most popular, and what I've understood, these are not so. Let's say like in domestic competitions are not so competitive, but when you go on an international level and you have actually Team Finland, Team Sweden, Team Estonia doing ice fishing, and you can find clips on YouTube about this, but these, I would say, these are more serious than these are national level competitions.
For sure. So like the seriousness of the hobby increases as you go farther abroad, which is really interesting for tourism as well. Thank you, Jarno, for the presentation. If you have any questions for Jarno or comments with this study, or would like to know more, maybe you can even copy and paste the link to the paper.
Yes,
chat,
I will.
So people are able to read.
Yes, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we have a special guest, and we are happy to have our newest adjunct professor, Siamak Seyfi, on our webinar. Siamak is an adjunct professor with us and assistant professor at the University of Oulu, and he will be presenting us research results on how does digital media engagement influence sustainability-driven political consumerism among Gen Z tourists. So highly relevant for sustainability discussion, consumer behavior, and we are really happy to have you here, Siamak.
Well, thank you very much, Juho, for these kind words, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our participants, depending on where they are. It's a great pleasure to be with you today to talk about digital media engagement and sustainability-driven political consumerism from the lens of Gen Z, Generation Z, which is actually was the topic of one of our papers that published in Journal of Sustainable Tourism more recently in August. and it was a collaboration with researchers from New Zealand and France. And well, actually, before starting by presenting the key findings of the research, let me share with you some background information about ethical consumption, political consumption, digital media, and the role of digital media in mobilization and construction of political consumerism, as well as the role of Gen Z in change processes toward sustainable development of tourism. Ethical consumption, nowadays we've heard a lot about ethical consumption in tourism when it comes to decision-making for travel, when it comes to behavior in the destinations. Ethical consumption or political consumption is now become one of the core focus of the discourses, and there is a growing public awareness about environmentally responsible practices, responsible consumption, and there is an expanded media coverage of the environmental and social issues. So this is also was recognized by the UN SDGs, one of Goal 12, which emphasize responsible consumption and productions. This is important because nowadays consumption, contemporary consumption, plays a significant role in constructing personal identities. The concept of political consumerism, for those of you who may not be familiar with this concept, or this concept might be new for you, means instance when people evaluate and choose producer and products because they want to change ethically, environmentally, or politically objectionable institutional or market practices. And political consumerism is a form of civic activism and political engagement. And after voting, for example, for presidential election, political consumerism is the most widespread and common form of political engagement. And it's also a way to establish new modes of political participation based on individualized and personalized responsibility taking. And in the tourism context, in our field, it refers to the to tourists that actively choose or refuse particular tourism services in order to generate a social and environmental or ethical change. This concept has been discussed in a variety of fields, but has not been discussed a lot in tourism, and has also evolved over time. Nowadays, as I just mentioned, consumers choose more expressive and personalized form of participation that reflect their political or moral concern and trying to change the trajectory of the businesses. And there are different forms of political consumerism, like boycotting, means punishing businesses, services, destinations, service provider, tour operators, hotels, means boycotting. And the positive form of the boycotting means boycotting or reverse boycotts, which support businesses or services exhibiting desirable behavior. Boycott and boycott are the most common forms of political consumerism. Of course, there are also discursive and lifestyle forms of political consumerism, which were beyond the focus of this study. We mainly focused on boycotting and boycotting in our study. But why Gen Z matters? Because we've heard a lot about new cohorts of travelers, new cohort of consumerism that bring their moral values or their political values into the marketplace. But why Gen Z matters? Let me give you some information and a statistic about the Gen Z. First of all, there is no single definition defining the age groups of this cohort, but commonly it refers to those that born between mid to late 1990s and early 2010s. 10s, between 80s, let's say, and 24, 25 years old. And this cohort will soon surpass millennials as the world's most populous generation. They already make up over one third of the global population, and their purchasing power 5 or 6 times that of prior generation. And because of their exposure to social media platforms and their digital skills, for many, the Gen Z are regarded as digital natives. And this generation purchasing power and lifestyle preference are different from those of previous generations in terms of their awareness, in terms of their engagement with ethical consumptions, choices. And that was also the key focus of these studies. But that was trying to also bridge digital media sustainability, political consumerism. But why digital media matters for political consumption? The key question in our study was to how digital media engagement influence, construct, and mobilize political consumerism. Well, nowadays, for promoting any forms of the tourism in contemporary business of the tourism and destination, digital media is essential, okay? But at the same time, digital media expose tourism destination and tourism businesses to tourist and interest group driven political and social marketing. It's positive, but at the same time is negative in that way. And digital media contribute a lot to the construction of political consumerism because the internet has expanded its reach as an everyday means of communications. And social media has made it easier for engaged consumers that they can talk, they can discuss about their disapproval, about ethical consumptions, and new forms of, let's say, global social movement have been emerged over the last few years. They are cyber activism, internet activism, clicktivism, or there are different other terms that define these new forms of social movements. In our study, the key focus was Gen Z, and the key question and the key objective was to how digital media drives the construction and mobilization. And theoretically, this study was guided by lifestyle politics theory, because lifestyle politics theory explained why political and ideological beliefs are associated with consumption decision. And in one of the definition here, you can see that lifestyle politics theory explain the politicizations of everyday life, including ethically, morally, or politically inspired decisions. And individual disconnect from the institutional construction of identity. As I mentioned, that nowadays consumption plays important role in construction of personal identities. And here says that people stay away from institutional construction of identity and enjoy their freedom to construct their lifestyle, identities, and social networks. And boycotting and boycotting are a form of lifestyle politics and lifestyle-based informal mobilization that individuals, they avoid, they stay away from traditional politics like voting, and they try to demonstrate its support for political concerns that can be environmental preservation, biodiversity life, climate change, fair trade, human rights, animal welfare, and other forms of ethical practices. Well, some information about our research methodology. Well, as I just mentioned earlier, that the political consumption or political consumerism has very rarely discussed in tourism. So that's why our study had an exploratory nature of a study, and that's why an interpretive research paradigm was adopted. And it was a qualitative research. because qualitative research provides a richer and more in-depth information, especially for this topic, which is about discussion about live experience of the people. And our sample was Gen Z cohort between 8 and 24 years old with prior familiarity with boycotting and boycotting. A combination of convenience, purposive, and sober sampling were used to approach people. And 36 interviews were conducted following the data saturation, 19 males and 17 females. And we use a thematic analysis for data analysis. Different set of procedures were also ensured for task forces of this study. So this diagram, these figures, shows the key findings of our study. Let me explain in more details. Well, overall in our study, Gen Z had a varying level of engagement in digital political consumerism in relation to the sustainability. So as you can see, we found a spectrum, a continuum for Gen Z digital political consumerism activities, which we labeled spectator, transitional, and gladiatorial behaviors. Now, I'm going to explain what these terms mean in more detail. Well, these activities, as you can see here, range from a very passive feedback, which is really called spectator activities, to the pursuit of digital communications that in the last stage, that here the Gen Z, they actively seek behavioral or policy change via boycotting or boycotting. That's why we call them gladiatorial activities. We found also two forms of stimulus, which were exposure to digital media information and digitally derived networks. Exposure to the media coverage of a boycott campaign or a boycott campaign generate a desire for the Gen Z. They learn about the boycotts or boycott call, they learn about the boycott target or boycott topic. And here the digital information source play a very important role in their boycott decisions, either to participate or refuse to participate. Another stimulus was that we called digitally driven networks. Well, as a matter of fact, social ties, which are social connectedness to online groups, create awareness and mobilize people to participate in political consumerism activities. Well, you may have seen many online campaigns calling for boycotting of a destination, boycotting of a product, boycotting of a service provider, and that the online group, they share content with their members and followers on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, people share information about the boycotts, and that they encourage their followers, they encourage those people, those peers in their networks to learn about ethical consumption and political consumerism issues. And here, this works as a stimulant to generate awareness. And once the awareness is formed, that people learn about the boycott call, so they participate, and here the participation means different levels of the participation. In the spectator activities, which in our study constitute the majority of digital activism acts and attracts the most participants, but you know that it's stuff like sharing, reposting, commenting, subscription, but these activities are a limited form of participation, are a learning mode or passive, let's say, modes of activities. The next level here, transitional activities, it is more about the membership, about the campaign groups, participating in the workshops, and here different forms of social marketing, upstream social marketing elements, shapes, which leads to the next level. Here is gladiatorial, is the most active forms, comparing with the spectator, which was the passive forms here. So here it's the direct actions to make change, like content creation, organizing a campaign, developing e-petitions. Well, here these activities, they have the potential for major impacts on society, governments, policymakers, organization, destination. So as you can see here, that shift from being a supporter to being an organizer, online political activities because of the online social environment. So actually this diagram more or less frames and captures the main findings of our study. All right, so there were also some theoretical contribution to the existing literatures. The first contribution is that our study that focused on political consumerism, which has been overlooked in tourism research, and we also discussed forms of political action in a tourism context, and that framework that was in previous slide that shows a spectrum of online political consumerism was one of the key contributions of this study. The second contribution was that our study extends the understanding of how online pro-sustainability behavior intersects with different aspects of sustainable behavior. Well, in tourism, it is recognized that the sustainable tourism is related with the upstream social marketing, and the role of online communication for tourism has been recognized, but there is a very limited studies on tourism-related, digitally mediated or digitally driven political consumerism. So our study was for that purpose. The third contribution was that there was a little empirical research on Gen Z. The majority of studies on Gen Z in tourism are conceptual, and there is a very little empirical research on Gen Z, and especially their engagement with political consumerism, and of course, understanding of Gen Z of ethical consumption as a political practices. Well, so what are the practical implication of this research for destination? Well, first of all, something which was very important is that in this study, that this spectrum of Generation Z digital political consumerism shows that destination and tourism businesses should consider the importance of clear digital information provision and communication, because it is at this point that tourists, especially the young cohorts of travelers like the Gen Z, decide whether these issues are meaningful for them or not, or they seek to influence decision. So the second point is that tourism business should recognize the significance of responsible consumption or ethical consumption and the potential for shift from individual to collectivist tourism activities. So what's very important here that nowadays tourists, they use their consumption as a tool for making pressures in order to generate change. So this should be recognized by the destination and tourism businesses. And the other thing is that digitalization of the tourism businesses is the double-edged sword. What does it mean? It means that at one point it's okay, it's positive for communications. At the same time, it's also exposed the tourism destination businesses to the upstream social marketing, to the tourist digital activism. And the other thing is that understanding how and why tourists react to corporate sustainability related practices is very critical for destination marketing organization, and tourism businesses, destination, especially the DMOs, should recognize the political and mediating power of social media, especially in the light of the digitalization and widespread use of social media by tourists. Well, let me conclude by some lines for future research. I hope I'm stayed within time. Yeah, I'm going to finish by this slide. Well, in our study, we focused on political consumerism with a special focus on Gen Z. One of the most interesting line of research for future studies to analyze political consumerism through the generational lens. I mean that adding other generational understanding of this phenomenon, or understanding of ethical consumption as a political practices through the eyes of different generation, millennials, baby boomers, Gen X, from the different generation. The other important point here that we also found in our study was a strong link between digital media engagement and political consumerism. But you know that the intensity of mobilization could be different by country, by context, by age group, by the generation, by political culture, of course, across boycotting and boycotting, which are two different concepts. Another line of research here is to understand how businesses, destination governance, respond to digital political consumerism, and what are their resilience mechanism, their adaptation mechanism, and tactics and means to engage and counter boycotts and boycott. This is also very interesting line of research for future study. And the other line of research, which is very important, which is the focus of one of our other studies, is to the barriers to tourist ethical and political consumerism across different generations. We know the motivator, we know the drivers of participation, but we hardly know the barriers. So that was one of the focus of our one of our studies. And the last line of research that we suggested is to investigate the drivers of political consumerism in tourism for all the three spectrums, and the role of digital media in shaping these behaviors. So these are more or less some lines for future studies. And that brings me to the end of my presentation, and I'll be very happy to engage with you in case you have any questions.
Great, thank you, Siamak. And this was actually another topic we discussed briefly with our new students, this impact that social media has on our lives, and many of these things that we don't even like acknowledge consciously that are still affecting and changing our behavior. And back in the days, a few years ago, we did one study with one of my master's theory students and noticed that actually the most important factor in explaining sustainable consumer behavior is the perception of how they think their family, friends, and relatives think about sustainable consumption. So when you see that people around you are behaving and promoting sustainability, then you start doing that yourself. And that means that social media is a critical instrument for sustainable consumption. And I think this study is a fantastic example how that builds up and what's the logic behind it. So really interesting and useful research in so many different ways. How about your future plans? Are you still looking at social media yourself, or moving forward?
Well, actually, in one of our research that is in progress, we try to identify different drivers and barriers of participating in boycotting and boycotting that shaped in a digital media environment, and the role that social media, as you mentioned, that, for example, you mentioned about the family pressures, about the peer pressures. Yeah. It's also very important that peer pressure, for example, that kind of motivator that motivates people to participate in boycotting and boycotting. Yes, this is also one of our studies that we are doing at the moment.
Yeah, for me, it feels like social media is nowadays like fun and games, but it could be a lot more. And it actually is when you consider, for example, transparency it causes with businesses, that businesses cannot behave in an unethical way anymore because of social media. Like there's very little things that businesses and destinations can hide because of social media. So I think that it has brought up a lot of good stuff for tourism as well. Of course, there's all these, like, the other side is this Instagram tourism and, you know, over tourism destinations that is like, I think exactly the opposite of what you are studying. So instead of boycotting, you are going full in buying all the possible trips to that location. So it's a double-edged sword. I really like that in your slides. But thank you for your presentation, and we still have two presentations left for this afternoon, and these are presentations from our students who are nearly graduating or have graduated recently, and we are really happy to demonstrate the research our master thesis students are doing, because the quality is very high with many of them, and all the knowledge and insights they bring into these discussions are definitely fruitful and interesting for us all. So I'm really happy to welcome the next speaker, who is Markus. Markus, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Excellent. And I've been supervising your research, but I haven't seen the latest results, so I'm looking forward for your presentation, and let's see what you have found out when you have been examining the sustainability importance of sustainability attributes for German tourists. And please, you can start your presentation.
Yeah, sure. So you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So hello everybody. My name is Markus Rantsi, and as Juho said, I'm one of Juho's master students, and I've been working on my master's thesis, which I'm going to present the results of today here. And the topic of my thesis is the impact of sustainability communication to tourists' willingness to pay for a cottage holiday. And my thesis has been supervised by Katja Pasanen and Juho Pesonen, and this research has also received a scholarship funding from the Finnish Foreign Trade Promotion Fund. To start off, a few words about the background of my research. When I started to think about the topic to my master's thesis, I wanted to contribute to the tourism industry by making tourism better in a way that would make people consume more sustainable tourism products. And the way to do that, I figured that we need to offer them options that they're actually interested in, but options that they're also willing to pay for at the same time, to make sure that the investments to sustainable actions are profitable for the supplier side as well. So I was also asking myself, do the tourists think actually that sustainable options are worth paying for and worth paying more than the regular options? And if yes, then whether there are some differences between different sustainability causes. Are some options more interesting than others? And earlier research shows that in general, sustainable products do generate higher willingness to pay, both in tourism and in other contexts as well. There are some contextual differences, for instance, between different countries or between different trades, etc. But in general, sustainable products generate higher willingness to pay. And willingness to pay, of course, in this case refers to the maximum price somebody is willing to pay to obtain a service or a product. And I decided to apply Swabbrix theory of sustainable tourism, which recognizes 3 dimensions of sustainability, which are environmental, sociocultural, and economic dimensions. And my main points of interest in this research were firstly, whether tourists are actually willing to pay more for sustainable products than regular products. Secondly, whether there are differences in the way tourists value each sustainability dimension. So, for instance, if environmental sustainability causes are valued higher than sociocultural sustainability causes, There is some research comparing different sustainability causes, but no other research that I have found has compared these dimensions explicitly against each other. So this is kind of a novel way of approaching this sustainable consumption, willingness to pay area of research. And third main point of interest is that do socio-demographic factors such as income, age, gender, etc. Play a role in the formation of willingness to pay, which, by the way, I'm going to be abbreviating as WTP, so don't be fazed by that. And I decided to examine the views of German tourists, because German tourists are an important target group for Finnish tourism, and my study context is Eastern Finnish holiday cottages, and German tourists are also an important target group for that tourism business segment in Finland as well. And based on this, I formulated two research questions. One is, how does the promotion of different sustainability dimensions affect German tourists' willingness to pay for a Finnish cottage product? And the second is related to the socio-demographic factors' role in predicting willingness to pay. So basically how socio-demographics affect the willingness to pay for the sustainable cottage products. A few words about the methodology. The sample consisted, as I said, of German people, and I conducted this study as a quantitative study online questionnaire that was distributed through German bloggers, influencers, and other travel-related social media channels that were focusing on Finland as the travel destination. And this led to the fact that the sample then consisted of people who already were familiar with Finland as a tourism destination and were somewhat familiar with cottages, which is good. And I had in total of 279 respondents out of 241 were valid answers that could be used in the data analysis. I used the so-called contingent valuation method to examine the willingness to pay. It is very straightforward and simple. It's basically described as that I ask a question that how much are you willing to pay for this and this option, and then the respondent answers accordingly. It is a very widely used method for examining willingness to pay for non-market goods like sustainability in this case. I presented the respondent with 4 cottages. First was a baseline cottage, and then there were 3 so-called manipulated cottages, each of which represented one dimension of sustainability through a list of varying attributes. So the baseline cottage is based on a real cottage product, which is located in Eastern Finland, and it had the real attributes of the cottage, but with no emphasis on sustainability. And also the market price of 150 euros was presented with the baseline cottage. And then the 3 other cottages, each of which represented a sustainability dimension. So, for instance, the environmentally sustainable cottage would have attributes such as renewable electricity or water conservation measures in place. And economically sustainable attributes would be something like the business owner is paying higher salaries than average to their workers, etc. So that's how the cottage's attributes were formulated. And the respondents indicated their willingness to pay, or the price that they were willing to pay, with a slider, with the prices ranging from 0 to 300 euros, as the market price 150 euros was presented as price anchor, so the maximum was double the market price. And then let's jump on to see what the results were. Quick summary, 3 points. First of all, German tourists are willing to pay more for an environmentally friendly cottage. Secondly, the premium that they're willing to pay for is quite high, which is 15.1% on average based on my results. This is somewhat higher than in earlier research, where the so-called green premium usually settles around 5 to 10%. So 15% is quite a high premium compared to earlier research. And then third point that we can bring up from the results is that socio-demographic factors are not a very useful predictor of willingness to pay formation, at least not in this case, and not by themselves. A closer look at the results, first of all, about the willingness to pay. So environmental sustainability was basically the only dimension that I found to have a significant effect on willingness to pay. And on average, the tourists were willing to pay 22.61 euros more for the environmentally sustainable option compared to a regular cottage. And on the table, we can see that the price of the baseline cottage, so basically the regular product with no sustainability attribute, is 150 euros, and the mean willingness to pay for environmental option is 172.61 euros. Somebody's microphone is on. Okay, now it's on. Where was I? Yeah, so the mean premium is 22.61 euros and 15%. And 2 out of 3 people, or yeah, 2/3 of the respondents were willing to pay a premium, a number which is somewhat in the range of the earlier research as well. And the results for social, cultural, and economic dimensions did not reach statistical significance.
Haluaisin kuunnella tästä Zoomista tätä tilaisuutta, mutta en kuule mitään.
Okay, there's somebody's microphone is on again. Okay, yeah, so social, cultural, and economical did not reach statistical significance in my ANOVA tests, so we won't dig any deeper into those results. But we can see that environmental cottages generate significantly positive willingness to pay compared to regular products. Then for the social demographic factors, I used K-means cluster analysis to group the respondents based on their willingness to pay into 3 groups. And then I compared whether the social demographic variables had a significant connection with the formation of willingness to pay. And the social demographic factors effect was minimal, because the only significant result that I was able to get was that people who are employed full-time were more likely to pay higher amounts for sustainable products than people who belong in a group which consists mostly of retired people and students, which kind of is not surprising and makes total sense, but is not a very groundbreaking result. And as a conclusion, we can infer that social demographic factors, at least not in this case, are not a very good predictor of willingness to pay. Then my final conclusions, brief conclusions. I decided to focus on the managerial contributions in this case. Based on the results, environmental sustainability brings added value to German tourists, which then leads to higher willingness to pay. And I conclude that investing into environmentally sustainable practices can be a profitable business strategy because of 2 things. First of all, higher value, which leads to higher willingness to pay. It leads to increased revenue. So the companies are able to charge more for their services and get more revenue and income that way. And also a second thing that is related especially to environmental investments is lower operating costs. So if your company or your cottage business, for instance, invests into energy conservation, energy saving, or water conservation, that usually lowers your operating costs immediately. So first of all, you get increased revenue through higher willingness to pay, and then you get lower operating costs with the investments to these kind of technologies or other things. So that's one thing to keep in mind, that actually investing in sustainability can be profitable for your tourism business. Second thing, which is critical, especially in reaching the higher increased revenue, is that you need to be communicating your sustainability actions very actively to your desired target group, because active communication is the key. It is basically the way that you are able to give the impression that your product is unique and it's valuable to the customer, and also make the customer want to pay more for your sustainable product than for the competitor's regular product. So active communication is very, very important. You need to do it in an organized, planned way to reach the benefits of higher willingness to pay. But you also need to keep in mind that the communication must be based on actual deeds. It must be truthful, because as we have seen today earlier, modern consumers are very knowledgeable of these kind of things. They're very savvy in detecting false marketing claims. And yeah, basically, if you communicate sustainability actions that are not based on reality, you are guilty of greenwashing. And if you get caught for that, then I think that's very, very much deserved, in my opinion. So base your active communication on reality, because consumers are very good at detecting false marketing claims. A few future research ideas, how this kind of topic could be researched a little bit deeper in the future. First of all, a larger sample size would be nice to gain more robust results. Of course, the sample size for this research was 241 people, which is good enough, but it could be bigger. Then maybe using a different methodology, which would gain a little bit different results, because the contingent valuations weakness is that it's quite hypothetical in nature. So maybe creating a more realistic market scenario for the respondents would give results that are reflecting reality a little bit better. And if we want to know the role of individual attributes in the process of formation of willingness to pay, maybe conjoint analysis would be a good method to be used in that case. And also you could run a regression analysis to find out whether the socio-demographic factors have a combined effect that affects willingness to pay. So for instance, if people with higher income and younger age would be kind of a segment that we can see that their willingness to pay is higher for sustainable products. So maybe a regression analysis of a combined effect of these socio-demographic factors would be also in place in the future. And what this research was not able to do is to answer the question of why environmental sustainability is valued higher than other dimensions. Values and attitudes have been found to, or personal values and attitudes have been found to have an effect in the formation of willingness to pay in earlier literature. So I think that maybe examining the personal values and attitudes of German tourists in conjunction with their consumption choices and willingness to pay would be a potential way of explaining why some sustainability features are regarded more valuable than others. And of course, you could do this study with a different group of people, different group of tourists, for instance, whether there are differences, Finnish tourists or Japanese tourists or Russian tourists, for instance. So this kind of study could be replicated with other target groups as well. But I think this was my small contribution of making tourism a little bit better. I thank you for your time and attention, and I think we can have a small chat or then move on to Nosat's presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Markus. There's already some questions from Daniela in the chat. Maybe you can answer them there, and we can move on with
sure.
Nosat in a few minutes. But thank you for the presentation indeed, and I think you found really robust and interesting results in your research. So it certainly makes us to think how we market our holiday homes and cottages. And in a way, it seems like double the benefits of getting the reduced costs of sustainability as well as increased value from the customer perspective. So, but on the other hand, it also shows that just focusing on the environmental sustainability, not making it too complex for the respondents, why they should come and choose this cottage is you cannot tell everything about sustainability. Maybe just focusing on the environmental sustainability would be the best kind of marketing to do based on these results. So I think that's very useful insights for many tourism businesses, and especially for us interested in German markets.
Yes, that's one thing that I wanted to find out, whether some ways of communicating, some ways of marketing are like more efficient in a way.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you so much. We are heading towards our last presentation. We have Nosat Zaravi, who just graduated from our program, demonstrating her results on the LGBTQ community's perspective regarding Finland as a tourist destination, and we are very much inclined to and interested in studying LGBTQ tourism in our research group, and I think Nosat's results will shed light on some of the basic understanding of what it means to be a tourism destination for LGBTQ tourists. So Nosat, really happy to have you here. and thank you for coming. We cannot hear you now, nor see you, but presentation is fine. Now there's now there's audio coming. Great.
Can you? Oh, sorry for that. Yeah. Okay. Hello everyone. My name is Noshat, and I will present my thesis today. So first, I will present a quick background information about the LGBTQ community. This community in the past 2 decades were able to reclaim their rights in many parts of the world and become a viable part of society and consequently the market. And
sorry to interrupt you. Can you change into presentation mode? Now we see the.
Is it now?
Now we just see the basic slides.
Sorry. Is it working now?
Okay, now we see research background. Right. So please continue.
The global population of this market is believed to be around 5 to 10% of the world's total in 2019. And the global spending power of these consumers is believed to be around 3.9 trillion USD annually. And the estimated GDP share from the LGBT community's international travel and tourism in year 2019 for Europe was 41.8 billion USD. And very quick information about the LGBT community rights in Finland and in tourism. We can see that Finland is the 6th most LGBTQ friendly country in Europe and sits in a joint place with Sweden among the Nordic countries. And regarding the LGBTQ travel safety, Finland ranks 18th among 150 countries. And in Finland, the most visible gay spaces are concentrated in Helsinki and to some extent in Turku and Tampere, which in total are around 112 gay-friendly establishments. And in comparison with the total tourism and hospitality businesses in Finland, it's not that many. So all of these elements point towards Finland being the LGBTQ-friendly country. However, there is a lack of LGBTQ tourism studies in Finland, and in order to address this lack, I really wanted to study how the international LGBTQ community perceives Finland as a tourist destination. So for my historical background method, there are 6 topics which I based my literature review on, and they were LGBTQ tourism, gay space, characteristics of LGBTQ tourists, LGBTQ motivation, gay friendliness, push and pull theory, and destination image. I won't go in detail to explain all of that because it will take some time. And the study method of this research was quantitative. And we used survey, and all these questions were based on previous study with some modification for demographic questions. And the target were international LGBT community members. And in this study, we anticipated getting answer from people that already traveled to Finland. So we designed a question with 3 different answers. And the groups made from the question were people who traveled to Finland before, those who never traveled to Finland but have some information about it, and third group is those who never traveled to Finland and have no information about it. 100 people answered the survey, and the analysis of data showed that the number of cisgender male and female respondents were almost equal, but gay respondents were notably more active in answering the survey than all other sexuality, and 67 respondents were in the 18 to 30 years old age group, and the majority of respondents were from North America and Europe, similar to other LGBTQ studies. So I designed 3 research questions, and the first is, how do the international LGBT community view Finland as a destination? And what I found out was that all the international LGBT community had a positive view of Finland. My second question was, how can the gay friendliness of Finland be communicated to international tourists in an attractive way? And it was discovered that it can be achieved through recommendation from family and friends in the specific channel. The most important is in search engines such as Google and news articles. And the last question was, which attributes of a destination such as Finland can act as a pull factor for the LGBTQ community? And there were several, like Northern Lights, relaxing atmosphere, exploring new place, quality eating experience, opportunity to see wildlife and nature, dramatic and beautiful landscape and scenery, a safe and secure destination related to personal safety, and the LGBTQ friendliness of Finland. So comparing the data for 3 different groups, the findings showed that all of the respondents had a positive view of Finland. Finland has a very firm place in mind of LGBT community, and this place is significant enough for them to consider it a safe and secure country without having any prior knowledge about Finland's rules and regulations. Finland has been named the happiest country in the world for 5 years in a row, and Tom of Finland is a well-known comic among the LGBT communities. All of these could have created an unconscious and unintended awareness of Finland. The similar and different attributes when traveling in general and traveling to Finland. Respondent answered to 2 questions regarding when traveling in general to a destination and when traveling to the specific destination as Finland. We asked which attribute out of 33 attributes were important to them. Interestingly, there was no difference between answer beside 1, and that was accessibility of a destination. For respondent wanting to travel to Finland, this was not important. And the reason might lie with Finland being a Nordic country and having availability of regular flight for traveling to Europe. And 2 items, the security and the LGBTQ friendliness of a destination, have been assigned to 3 questions. 1 regarding the gay friendliness of a destination, and 2 questions regarding pull factor for a general destination and for Finland as a destination. And for each single question, these 2 items were selected by respondents. This points toward the importance of them on the LGBTQ mind. But it is believed that the existence of these 2 items are not enough to attract the LGBTQ community, but they are the requirement of the destination that they want to travel to. And the other was the Northern Lights, very important for them. And this similarity, in my opinion, might be based on the title of the study, which includes Finland as a destination, and it might have influenced the result. Because this phenomenon is well known and many people associated with Nordic countries, which could contribute to the selection of this option by respondent for both questions. Gay friendliness. So in order to answer to one of the question about how to communicate the gay friendliness of Finland, we first need to know which item of gay friendliness very important for the LGBT community. One of the items important for respondent was when a destination is anti-LGBTQ, because negativity ignites more emotion among people. The other was same-sex marriage. This may be because of the high number of LGBTQ marriage around the world and the desire of this married couple to be recognized legally, and maybe because some couple wants to renew their vows in another country or spend their honeymoon somewhere else. The other is inclusion of LGBTQ theme and image in mainstream media. In general, straight people react neutrally to these themes, so businesses can be sure that they won't lose their more conservative customers. When a potential LGBT customers see these themes or image in mainstream media, the idea of gay friendliness is imprinted in their mind, especially in today's world where inclusion is a very important aspect for minority in almost every aspect of their daily life. The other was the presence of gay culture and socializing with LGBTQ people. This can create a sense of safety, security, and familiarity with international LGBTQ people. The other item were feeling welcome in the destination, an open and tolerant attitude of the locals, and being identified by third party and friends as gay friendly, all point toward the authenticity of the destination. And there were 7 specific gay spaces mentioned as item of gay friendliness. However, none of them were selected by respondent as important, which shows that the exclusion of a straight space and creating exclusive gay spaces are not the answer of attracting the LGBTQ community, but it is rather the inclusion of gay space in everyday life. So for managerial contribution, equality eating experience was one of the essential attributes of Finland for the LGBT community. People who had no information about Finland wanted equality eating experience more than people who had some information about Finland or traveled to Finland before. This can point toward a lack of knowledge about Finnish food culture. Working with non-Finnish influencer on various social media platform could be beneficial for exposing more people to Finnish food. Like I would personally recommend Japanese food influencers, since there is a fondness and closeness between Japan and Finland, and it would be interesting to see them making Finnish food. In addition, Visit Kalevala could invite cooks and chefs from the local area or go to their place of business and film how they cook their traditional food, Finnish food, and then post this video on their social media. In addition, joining food festival in different countries could create an understanding of Finnish food or a buzz, which in return could create a positive word of mouth. Other pull factors such as opportunity to see wildlife and nature, dramatic landscape and scenery, and explore new experiences were also important for them. However, none of the Finnish activities, especially ones that are exclusive to North Carolina, were important for respondents. Therefore, a DMO with the participation of local authority could plan a cohesive design to support infrastructure and draw a specific budget for maintenance of this area. And many places in North Carolina already do this work, and I believe the focus of advertising for this area should be mostly on nature and hidden gems that can be found here. Visit Carolina on their website is already doing a great job by showcasing the local natural attraction. However, the visual representation could affect the decision making more if there were more photo of dramatic and beautiful landscape. So almost all of the gay friendliness items important for respondent already exist in Finland, and one of the most important items were existence of gay or LGBTQ themes in mainstream media. Since this is the targeted the international LGBT community, this mainstream media can be in form of advertisement, and any type of marketing campaign can include LGBTQ themes in their ads, whether it's video or photo-based. These themes don't need to be prominent or bold, and it is enough to just include them in the marketing, as this way the LGBT community can feel seen and valued as customers. How to communicate the gay friendliness of Finland. Being identified as gay friendly by family and friend of the LGBTQ member and being recommended by them are very important for LGBT community. The only way to transfer the gay friendliness value through the family members is by being authentic. As has been mentioned, Finland is very progressive on LGBTQ rights, and it is one of the safest countries for them to travel. And as Finland already have all these positive equality, the attention needs to be shifted toward people working in tourism businesses. They need to acknowledge the gay friendliness through action, not just symbol. A sense that everyone understands their need and that there won't be any awkwardness in interaction. There are a few ways to reach this authenticity. One can be through ongoing LGBTQ inclusive training of staff in tourism businesses and obtaining certificates from LGBT organizations and workshops such as We Speak Gay and ILGTA. They can greatly influence the gay friendliness of tourism business and create a sense of inclusion for LGBT tourists. On the other hand, by contacting the local LGBT organization and charities, DMOs and these organizations can build up a rapport and strengthen their ongoing relationship. Using their input and knowledge in developing marketing strategy can be quite beneficial. And all of these can create authenticity, which the LGBTQ community greatly desire. And people could recommend a destination to their family and friends or post about them online. And yeah, so in conclusion, we can see that all the international LGBTQ respondents had a positive view of Finland as a tourist destination. Nature and new experiences were front runners of Finnish pull factor, the same as in one of the Visit Finland study in 2019. However, none of the pull factor that make Finland stand out from its competitors were selected by the LGBT community, such as lakes. Finland, as a gay-friendly country, fulfilled gay friendliness requirement of the LGBT community. And this gay friendliness can be elevated through incorporating of two items. First, using LGBTQ themes in any kind of advertisement, and the second is creating authenticity. And then the gay friendliness of Finland can be communicated through the word of mouth of family and friends. And for this reason, the authenticity that we mentioned of tourism business is important. And as we say authenticity, it is important to always tell the truth in marketing campaign. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. I try to be as quick as possible.
That was right on point. Thank you so much for your presentation. Yeah, this is really nice to see these perspectives of the international community, even though only a small part of it, but still I think the main notion that, well, you know, being gay friendly is just like the first step. You also have to be great destination overall for this target market. And I think your presentation also gives some great ideas on potential influencers. Like I think there's like gay foodies and food influencers out there who could be really good for Finnish marketing Finland. But then on the other hand, we also need even more training among tourism personnel in order to, you know, just have the service level correct and have people behaving correctly. Because then with social media, you know, if something goes wrong, they tend to spread out, right? The bad news travel faster than light. But yeah. How do you see from your, you know, you're not finished, but how do you see from your own perspective and from your own experiences that how Finland is doing at this moment regarding this market segment? Are we like market leaders globally or running behind everyone else?
No, like based on my own research, like Finland is not one of the top countries for them to travel, because there is not enough buzz about Finland. Finland is not that well known as a destination in general, and then for the LGBT community, it's literally unknown. It's like where is Finland? But interestingly, some other Nordic country like Norway or Sweden are way more popular among LGBT community. There is even like cruises that's come from like America to Europe to just go to those destinations, and they don't even look at Finland. But Finland doesn't even have like the terrorist attack that happens to the LGBT community that some other countries Nordic has. Maybe it's because it's not unknown, but even having this good reputation should kind of like work in our favor. And I don't know, maybe it's the lack of communication with news or like an online platform in a way that's kind of keeping the Finland back from attracting this. But like when you go to Helsinki, it's just like very, very, it's like obviously so LGBTQ friendly, all the flags, and it's very, very good to see all of this. But in a smaller cities, you don't see it that much.
Yeah, so it's a different kind of. Helsinki differs from rest of the Finland quite clearly on these factors, and I think they've also invested strategically into this segment. So I think that's part of the inclusion, that how well different target groups are represented in your tourism development plans and so on, because they do direct the tourism development projects.
Yeah, I think sorry to add this, the problem here is that Finnish people are so open and accepting of everyone that they don't realize that they need to do a little bit more and a step more to look that they are accepting, because they know that they are accepting, but others don't know that. So that needs to be communicated.
It's like a hidden secret in a way.
Exactly.
Great. Thank you so much, Noshat, and thank you all presenters as well. Are there any questions or comments from the participants? Now it's open floor for everyone. If someone has any questions, either in the chat or raise your hand regarding these presentations that we've just seen. I think many people are already eager to leave, but you can find the details of the presentations from the slides. You are able to connect with the authors and researchers with the information they have provided. I also hope you are following us on LinkedIn and Facebook, and see our master degree program website. I've added the links to the chat. If there's no other comments, thank you all for joining in this session. I will also email the link to the recording once it's available on YouTube. And let's stay in touch. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, Kiran, do we have to complete thesis only related to Finland? No. Kiran, in our tourism marketing management program, your research can be global tourism research. So if you are studying Nepal or Australia, it doesn't matter to us, because the country is just a context. But we have access to good data in Finland, so a lot of the research we are doing is happening in Finland. Thank you all. Bye.